The rain poured down in sheets that evening, turning the streets into reflective rivers of light. Amid the cold and the chaos, a small diner glowed like a beacon of warmth. Inside, a woman sat alone at a corner table, her hands trembling slightly as she held a worn wallet. She was down to her very last dollar, the last bit of money she had to spend on herself. And yet, as she looked around, something in her heart stirred, a feeling she hadn't felt in a long time, the desire to help someone else, even when she had almost nothing left to give. It's incredible how a single act of kindness can change everything, not just for the person receiving it, but for the one giving it too. What this woman did next would leave an unforgettable mark on everyone present that night, and the ending, well, it's something you'll never forget. Before we dive deeper into this story, don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Story Hub and hit that like button if you enjoy heartwarming tales. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, too, especially if you've ever experienced a moment where a small act of kindness made a big difference in your life. The story begins. Her name was Margaret, a retired schoolteacher from a small town in Ohio. She had always been known for her generosity, but life had recently taken a tough turn. After her husband passed away, she found herself alone, living on a modest pension. Money was tight, and even buying groceries sometimes felt like a struggle. That evening, she walked into the diner wearing a light blue coat, the fabric worn at the elbows, and boots that had seen better days. Her plan was simple: a small bowl of soup and a cup of tea, her last indulgence before returning to her quiet apartment. The diner was busy but cozy. The aroma of freshly baked bread and sizzling bacon wrapped around the patrons like a warm hug. Margaret ordered her soup and tea, quietly sinking into the corner booth. As she stirred her soup, her eyes wandered to a young man sitting across the room. He looked exhausted, hunched over a tray of fries and a burger, his clothes worn and dirty. Margaret noticed something else too: he had no money to pay for more than that meal, and he seemed nervous, as if he was weighing whether to even order it. Her heart ached. She remembered times in her life when she had been strapped for cash, feeling invisible, hoping someone would notice and care. Without thinking twice, she quietly flagged the waitress over and said, "Please add one more meal to my order. Keep it for that young man over there." The waitress raised an eyebrow, surprised, but nodded. Margaret smiled gently, feeling a small flicker of warmth despite the cold outside. She returned to her soup, her mind wandering to her late husband. She imagined him saying, "Kindness costs so little, but it changes so much." Meanwhile, the young man, whose name was Daniel, noticed a waitress approach him with a plate he hadn't ordered. He froze, confusion written all over his face. I didn't," he stammered, but the waitress waved him off with a knowing smile. "It's on the lady over there," she said, pointing to Margaret. Daniel blinked, overwhelmed. He hadn't expected anything like this. He had been struggling to make ends meet ever since he lost his job at the factory. His mother had passed away recently, leaving him alone to manage bills and groceries. He wasn't used to strangers showing such generosity. The moment felt surreal, almost like stepping into a dream where the world still had magic. Margaret watched him from her booth, her heart swelling. She had given what little she had left, and yet, in giving, she felt richer than she had in months. There was a quiet dignity in her action, a reminder that kindness isn't measured by how much you give, but by the love behind it. As Daniel ate, he looked up at Margaret, his eyes glistening. After a few bites, he asked the waitress if he could thank her properly. Margaret shook her head, smiling. "No need," she said softly. "Just promise me you'll pass it on someday." Daniel nodded, tears welling up. That simple act of sharing a meal sparked a connection between two strangers, a bridge of humanity built in a single moment, a deeper connection. Over the next few weeks, Daniel couldn't get that evening out of his mind. He felt inspired, almost compelled, to act with the same generosity Margaret had shown him. It wasn't about money, he barely had enough for himself, but it was about the heart behind the gesture. He began volunteering at the local soup kitchen, helping other people who were struggling. Meanwhile, Margaret continued her quiet life, unaware that her small act of kindness had set off a ripple effect. She would occasionally visit the diner, always with a warm smile and a nod to the staff who knew her story. She didn't seek recognition, she just wanted to help where she could. Then, one chilly Saturday morning, something unexpected happened. Margaret's doorbell rang, and when she opened it, she saw Daniel standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers. But these weren't just any flowers, they were bright, freshly cut, vibrant with life. He handed them to her and said, "You don't know me well, but you changed my life that night. I wanted to thank you properly." Margaret was taken aback, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Daniel, I just shared my meal," she said, her voice trembling. "That's all." Daniel shook his head. "It wasn't just a meal. It was hope. You reminded me that people care, that the world isn't always harsh and unforgiving. Because of you, I've been able to help others, and I feel alive again." Margaret felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose, a validation that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple far beyond what the eye could see. As the story spread throughout their small town, more people learned of Margaret's generosity. Local news caught wind of the story, and soon the diner became known as the place where a simple act of sharing transformed lives. But what truly touched everyone wasn't the attention or the recognition, it was the simple truth that kindness has no limits. It can start with one person, one gesture, and grow to touch countless lives. Margaret and Daniel continued their bond, meeting regularly at the diner. They would sit together, sharing stories and planning small ways to help others. Margaret began hosting a weekly pay-it-forward table, where anyone could receive a meal if they needed it, no questions asked. Daniel helped organize the volunteers, making sure that the kindness she sparked would continue far beyond that rainy evening. One day, as they were cleaning up after a busy week, a little girl approached Margaret and held out a crumpled dollar bill. "I want to help someone too," she said shyly. Margaret smiled, her eyes glistening. "You already are," she whispered, and in that moment, Margaret realized something profound. Kindness isn't about grand gestures or fame. It's about noticing someone's need and choosing to act, even when you feel like you have almost nothing to give. The impact is immeasurable. Conclusion/uplifting ending. Margaret's story reminds us that the smallest acts can have the biggest impact. That evening, she shared her last meal with a stranger, not knowing it would ripple out to touch an entire community. And Daniel's journey shows us that the kindness we receive can inspire us to give back in ways we never imagined. The power of kindness lies in its ability to create connections, to remind us of our shared humanity, and to light up even the darkest days. No act is too small, no gesture too simple. Sometimes, it's the last dollar, the warmest smile, or the gentle word that changes everything. So, the next time you see someone in need, or feel the urge to lend a hand, remember Margaret and Daniel. Let their story inspire you to act, knowing that even the smallest spark of generosity can create an unforgettable fire of hope. After all, the world can always use more kindness. And who knows? Your single act of love today might just be the story someone tells tomorrow.